Good evening and welcome to the Kent County Public Schools Public Budget Hearing. Today is April 28th, 2022. This hearing is for the budget discussion regarding fiscal year 2023. The second item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Excuse me. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda as presented for this evening?
Motion to approve the agenda.
We have a motion by Ms. Sullivan. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Dr. Costa. Are there any comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Excuse me, opposed? Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all rise, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report, and Dr. Couch, I believe you are leading the discussion.
Right. You have your you have copies up here. Yeah, both of them. Okay. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. We'll start off with the PowerPoint, and then we'll go into the details in terms of the workbook. I know we got some additional questions as well, so we'll address those. As you know, we have 6 district goals based on our strategic plan. The first is to support early learning. The second is to provide access to a culturally relevant curriculum instruction that's aligned to the career and college readiness for Maryland. Provide an access to an array of professional development opportunities for our leaders, our teachers, and our support staff. Create a safe and inclusive culture that meets the social, emotional needs of the students. Ensure the families and community partner will be informed. This is to improve our communications. And also provide state-of-the-art learning spaces and tools that are equitable and inclusive. The next slide just goes over our vision and mission statements. Our vision is that all KCPS students will graduate equipped to achieve their highest potential. And our mission is that KCPS is an anchor organization that creates an environment of academic excellence through the collaborative, equitable, rigorous learning community. There are many factors that affect our budget, the first of which is the enrollment. Enrollment is a big portion of our funding because all of the numbers that we get in our funding from the state and from the county are generated from the enrollment. State compensatory aid is also a factor that it also depends upon what the increase is going to be from the state. And as you know, with Blueprint, we also get additional funding for Kerwin. The county share of Kerwin has not really kicked in at this point. It's just coming from the state. Salary and healthcare increases are also big factors of our budget. About 85% of our budget is salary and healthcare and benefits, so that is a big portion of our budget. And of course, budget requests from our middle level, administrators, our principals, our departments, whatever requests they have. We always ask them at the beginning of the budget season, what is it that you need? What is it that you want? What's lacking? And we try to accommodate those and plan those within the budget. The next item is an overview of the estimated revenues for FY23. As you can see, we're not asking for an increase of maintenance of effort from the county where it's flat funding. Whatever we got this year is what we're asking for next year. Net increase in state aid, the increase was $887,695. The net increase over other revenues, this is the increase in fund balance. The decrease in federal sources, this is money that we're no longer receiving for the retiree drug subsidy program, so there was a decrease there. And so the net increase in revenue is $1,585,087. That is really tiny, I know. That's why it's good that you have the handouts. I don't know, Ms. Stewart, if you would like to share anything with regard to this particular page? You'll see the breakdown in terms of where all of the additional revenue is coming from. I'll just share that we are getting money for TSI, which is the Transitional Supplemental Instruction. We're also getting additional funding for Blueprint, and you'll see that amount. We have the supplemental pre-K grant. Teacher salary incentive is $55,218. We are held harmless with declining enrollment. That's the $445,000. And, yeah, I don't think there's anything that's, you'll see that last year we used $1 million of our fund balance. And, I don't know if there's anything else that you want to note. You can do it from there.
So how much is in our fund balance?
We have $1 million, let me see, I wrote it down. Uncommitted, we have $1,824,467. And in this particular budget, we'll get to that in a minute, we're using about $775,000, so we're using half of it.
But that's on top of the 500,000 we put away
Yes.
somewhere?
Yes,
Okay.
that's still, the reserve is still there.
But that's also one-time money, so if we
Right.
want to match whatever we're using that money source for this year, for next year's budget, or FY '24, we need to make sure we have at least that amount still in
Right,
fund
and
balance.
that's why using all of the fund balance would not be wise in building a budget, because you're gonna have to at least be able to put that money, it's just like using your savings
Right.
to make your house payment, you've gotta be able to have that recurring money. So using half of it is aggressive, but at least we have the rest of it that we can utilize in FY '24 if we need to.
The net increase in state aid, is that going to be continued as well, that 887, will we get that in?
That's based on enrollment, so, so it could change from year to year. Now, Kerwin will be increasing over time, so there might be some increase. It might help offset that, but since we're, don't really know what the amount for Kerwin is going to be from the state or the county for FY '24, it's hard for me to guarantee that that's going to be stable.
Do we have an idea of what our anticipated sort of rollover losses in enrollment? Because we know the class sizes have been getting smaller every year anyway.
Yes, they are getting smaller. I didn't come prepared to talk about enrollment.
But we know that number,
But we-
right? It's based
Oh,
on
yeah.
September.
Right,
Okay.
but we know that number. I mean, I can look it up. If you want it, I can search it and find it for you.
No, I was just curious, we can.
Right.
I've got a question. If I'm reading this right. We've got 800,000 more in our fund balance than last year.
Yes.
And so how'd we get that?
That was actually through the pandemic. We were able to save money because we weren't utilizing as much money for substitutes. So we were able to save, every jurisdiction in the state of Maryland has been able to save money due to the pandemic. We didn't have as many costs. We didn't have substitutes. We had teaching positions that we weren't able to fill, that we didn't fill. So there was savings there. So there would be savings in salary line items. There would be savings in substitutes. We had other areas that we saved. There was some savings in our utilities because we didn't have our buildings fully operational and,
But we have been in person all this year.
yes.
So my question is, when you said something about substitutes, I was gonna ask you for the current year that we're in. because we had trouble getting substitutes. I think that's part of the reason we probably had some savings, right?
Absolutely.
We didn't have people to pay. And we've had some issues with transportation because we don't have bus drivers.
Correct.
So I was wondering if there are savings, what are we doing with it? Are we putting it in the fund balance or are we allocating it other places?
No, if whatever we have saved this year will go into fund balance
Okay.
for the following
Okay.
year. And that's where we built up that fund balance, the 1.8, that was
Okay,
from the
yeah.
prior year.
Right.
As you know, we get our financials in June of usually of the following year. So last year, 2021, for June, we had accumulated a million eight. And of that, that was due to mainly the pandemic. Now, we know that once we get fully operational, and we knew that, we will not.
But we are fully operational.
Right,
Okay.
but what I'm saying is we're not totally, because we're not able to get as many substitutes as
Okay.
we want.
Right.
But when we're fully back to normal, hopefully, and we get the substitutes that we need, we're gonna need every bit of that allocation that we had initially budgeted for substitutes.
So I don't know if my memory's correct, but when, I'll say in February, when we, to me, it was a surprise that we were gonna spend, I think it was $25,000 on Dr. Lever's company for consulting.
Correct.
And I think I asked where the money was gonna come from, and I think I remember your answer was the money we didn't spend on substitutes.
Correct.
Okay, I just, gotcha, okay.
All right.
How much do we usually spend in a normal year on substitutes?
The budget for substitutes is $225,000, but roughly we've kind of been at that or a bit under. But due to the pandemic, really for the last couple of years, we haven't reached to that maximum.
Prior to the pandemic, we exceeded that budget. We had to allocate additional funding for
Do you
substitutes.
know why there was a shortage? The reason I'm gonna ask is, I wondered if we offered to pay them more,
We did.
and they still didn't bite? Okay, just wondered.
And it's, I want to echo Dr. Couch. It is felt all over. You know, we offered in Montgomery County to pay them a great deal more, and still no
get 'em.
one,
Okay, and same thing with bus drivers? Okay,
because we were in our county.
Take it back. Bus drivers, that's based on the negotiated agreement. So
Okay.
we cannot do that unless it's negotiated with the
Okay.
union.
But even with same thing with bus drivers in our when I in the county I served, well, teaching, was the same thing there. So it was felt all over.
All right, so an overview of the estimated expenditures. You'll see that a great chunk is allocated to salaries, $1,077,079 is allocated to our salaries, and that is based on negotiated agreements. We have 3 tentative agreements now. Our employees wanted the majority of the increase to go towards salaries. And so that's where, if you look at where our priorities are within the budget, our priorities are to improve salaries. And so that's where a great deal of the increase is going. I will note that we have to have a 10% increase to our teacher salaries by FY '24, July 1, 2024. We also have to have all of our teachers beginning salaries at $60,000 by FY '29, July 1 of 2029, yeah.
And where does this year's increase in salary, how close does that get us to that 10% increase?
We're still gonna have a ways to go.
Okay.
We're probably going to be short about 4%, that we'll have to accomplish for next
For
year.
next year, okay.
Yeah.
when will the county's portion of Kerwin kick in?
Good question. I don't know. I don't know when that will.
Okay,
I mean, it's my hope that some of that will start kicking in, but what I don't know is how it's going to affect Kent County. Because each jurisdiction is different, and the other thing that I might note is that the state is also contracting with APA again, which is that Auburn Blick company. It's APA, that's their acronym. They're contracting with APA to do another study about the funding source. So it may change, because all of the populated dollars that were coming to Kerwin were based on pre-pandemic enrollment. So they're not accurate at all. So we can't even really go back to the populated estimated amounts that were put in the documents that we received even 2 years ago or a year ago, because they're all populated based on pre-pandemic enrollment. So they're going to have to go back and redo all of those. So I don't know, I don't have an answer for you.
So I know anecdotally, everything's up in the air because of Kerwin. Just, we're not building any of our budget on expectations of a finite amount, right?
No.
Okay, because I'm just saying, like you're just saying, it
No,
could be
no.
a completely different thing.
It could be more, it could be flat again, it could be.
When are we supposed to see, I don't know what the amount will be, but when are we supposed to start seeing some Kerwin money?
It was estimated pre-pandemic again.
Yeah.
Again, I'm going back
I
to what we thought we knew. We're supposed to see a small increase next year.
That's what I thought. So we went basically a year and a half in pandemic, right?
Right.
I thought it was during that period that Kerwin was approved. It wasn't approved pre-pandemic, was it?
Yes.
Right, then it was probably right before the pandemic, because March of 2020 is when
Right.
schools shuttered, and that would have been the end of the General Assembly.
Right. Pre-pandemic is when Kerwin was
Okay.
approved.
I'm just wondering if, just that, there was all this talk about Kerwin, and it was gonna be, especially a small county like ours, basically our salvation, and now I'm thinking, you know what, it was a bunch of smoke, and I'm not faulting the commissioners, because I do agree with them, it's one of these state mandates that basically is leaving the counties on the hook for paying the money, and a lot of counties don't have that kind of money.
Counties and state will have to come up with their share.
And what happens if they don't?
I
Are
don't
they
have an
gonna be-
answer for
gonna be
that.
sent to the wood pile? No,
Well,
Well-
the interesting thing is we
Could
had, the superintendents had a meeting with the AIB executive director, which is Rachel Heiss. And Dr. Kerwin also attended that meeting. That was a couple weeks ago. And we talked to them about how the money is populated and making its way down to the school systems, that this 10% increase in the $60,000 requirement for teacher salaries, the money, if you look at the way it is now, the money is not there. So if we're gonna have to meet these mandates, there's gonna have to be a change in terms of how the money is making its way to the districts, because it's not there. So they took it to heart. I think one of the things they talked about is extending the deadlines. So instead of having to meet the 10% by FY '24, it may be FY '25, which will provide some relief. And then instead of having to meet the $60,000 salary requirement, or beginning teacher salary in FY 2029, or excuse me, FY '30, which would be July 1 of '29, maybe that would be extended to July 1 of '30. I don't know. These are, we're no different than any other jurisdiction, having to try to figure out how we're going to implement all of the requirements of Kerwin, and they're great. I mean, it's a heavy lift. It's not just teacher salaries, it's not just, it's CCR, it's CTE, it's, we've got all of these requirements. The career and college readiness piece is huge. We're gonna have to do we've already started doing some of the ninth grade tracking, which we're already ahead of the game on that. But there are quite a few requirements that we're gonna have to put in place that, you know, where are the dollars gonna come from, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, the cynic in me says we may never see Kerwin implemented.
Well, if you go back to, and this was, you know, when we had the Thornton legislation, they claimed that that was never funded, and a lot of the money came from special education was through Thornton, and we never saw that fully funded by the legislature. So I'm not gonna say, I mean, the cynic in you could be absolutely
I think the cynic
correct.
in me is a realist, right, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Well, the foundation of Kerwin and the framework has been established, but now it's to your point, how is it going to be funded? And every pillar and every requirement in all, across the state is being flexed and moved and pushed, and folks are saying, hey, wait a minute, time out.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, but I'm right with you, though.
This
I
is
mean,
not
who knows?
county-centric.
Right.
This is statewide,
Yep.
and I guess part of my point is that, I think, I'll speak for myself, but when I say we, that the expectation was it was going to be a boon to us, it's like, can you hold your breath just a little bit longer? Well, I'll tell you what, 2029 is way down the road, and a whole heck of a lot can happen between now and then, so.
Well, and that's just that one element. I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of other requirements that are pushed in a lot sooner than that. But just the salary piece, which is huge, and the portion of our budget that is greatly, it greatly encompasses salaries, that is a big worry for us, is, meeting that 10%. And we shared with Dr. Kerwin that all of the challenges that school systems are having, because you can't count the step in with the 10%. So when I say that the teachers have to incur a 10% increase, that is COLA, that's cost of living. That is not steps. And so teachers historically expect to have a step increase in addition to a COLA. So you can't count the you can't count the step increase, which might be about a 2%. It could be up to a 3%. You can't count that towards the 10%. So, you have to figure out where you're going to come up with that 10% increase and that 10% COLA in addition to the step. So it's mind-boggling.
Well, it sounds like, when I say we, I'm talking about every county, okay? Just school districts in general are gonna have to start, meeting these criteria. So we're the payoff is here, okay? And we're slowly, it's like we're putting money in, hoping to get something out at the end. And I worry that we do all this stuff on the build-up, and then at the end of the thing, the rug gets pulled out. Oh, I'm sorry, you know what, guys? We just couldn't make it work after all. So, which is unfair.
Dr. Couch, for next year, what will be the starting salary of first-year teachers?
We can't really put that out there yet because we haven't ratified the contract at this point in time.
What ballpark?
Just take the salary.
Should be somewhere between $15,000 and $51,000 for a teacher that has a standard certification.
But no master's degree.
Somebody right out of college with a certification, that's what we're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
To a traditional certification program.
Which we've done a pretty good job in terms of building up that beginning teacher salary. We've still got a ways to go. I'd like to see us do better. I do agree with this budget in terms of putting as much money as we could into salaries, which is what we did. You'll see the vast majority of our increase goes towards that. We have tried to focus in terms of chopping off the beginning steps and then adding more at the end, and working with our unions to try to do that so we could increase that beginning salary. Because I would say 4 or 5 years ago, we were at 43. So, you know, we had a lot of work to do.
The highest paid teacher, the longest serving, how much will they be making?
I don't have that salary schedule in front of me, so, I mean, why don't you go with the current year's salary now? I mean,
So if you look at our scale, which is our most experienced, teacher with a advanced professional certificate and a doctorate, currently, it's around $87,000.
And how many people do you think fall into that category?
In that exact category, there's maybe a handful off the top of my head. These are teachers with actual doctorate degrees.
yeah. We actually, if you compare us with some of our neighbors, we don't do so well at the beginning. We do better at the middle and the end. So, and that's just the way our salary schedule is structured. We've, in some cases, and the other thing that we do that other counties don't necessarily do, is we provide teachers with every bit of their experience when they come to work for Kent.
Even
So-
if it isn't with Kent,
Even if
they
it
get
is,
credit for it?
as long
Okay.
as if a teacher comes here with 20 years' experience, we give them 20 years of experience. They go to a neighboring county, they're capped at only bringing in 10. So in some cases, it helps us because we can recruit them and say, we'll give you every bit of your experience if you come to work with Kent. So that's really helped us with our recruitment efforts.
Is that something we've done new over the last couple of years, or has that been something we've been doing?
We've been doing it since I've been here.
Okay.
Is there still a incentive for new teachers working at Title I schools where they get a deferred loan?
Yes. If they work at a Title I school, we can sign paperwork so they can defer their loans,
Well, practically all of our schools are Title I, aren't they?
except for the high school.
Right.
Dr. Couch, I was I'm on a May legislative committee, and the wrap-up was a few days ago, and one of the things that seemed like it's going to be a big expense is that we're going to have electric vehicles. All our buses are going to have to be electric in the pretty near future.
I haven't heard that.
Yep, and there'll have to be solar panels on the roofs of our schools.
Yeah.
You're not familiar with that? Sounded very expensive.
Yeah. I mean, typically, we have our legislative updates in terms of what passed and what,
Yeah, this
What?
is what passed.
okay, this is what passed. There must be I mean, one of the things that we were looking at was there's a change in paternity leave, but that doesn't really kick in until FY '29 or or FY '26, I think, or something like that. So I would be very interested to find out what year.
For 2025, zero emissions vehicles will be required for new buses.
Okay, for new buses, because I can't imagine
And
they
new
would
schools.
require all of the buses that we already currently have be
No.
electric.
But they still think a lot of bus drivers well, we own the buses, so it doesn't matter for us, but in districts where they contract them out, they think they're going to leave.
The vehicles that we are on the waiting list for that are also student vehicles that we
The
can use?
vans.
Are they a hybrid or anything? Is it-
I know that Mr. Wheeler is going to present on that at the next board meeting.
Okay, great.
So I don't know what he has on order, but
I wonder if they
we've been
fall under.
told that there are only 10, I think he said that there were only 10 that were going to be available. And we have a hold on 2, and they're a year out in getting them. So,
I
and
was
I,
listening to the county commissioners meeting this week, because they were talking about vehicles, and they were talking about a company like a Brambles, for example, trying to get a new dump truck or something like that, and they are at least a year out from getting anything new.
And I guess it has to do with the chips. I have no idea. But it's just a matter of manufacturing them. They're about a year out. We weren't even sure we could get vans. I know we've been trying to get vans, and we tried to get them at the beginning of the year, and we were told they were not available. And so now we're on the waiting list. And we hope, I mean, the ideal scenario would be that we might have them sometime in October, but I don't have an estimate. They still have not given us an estimated timeline of when we would get those vehicles. So we went ahead and got our name on the waiting list, but we're going to bring it for your approval in June.
Dr. Couch, on this slide here, the estimated expenditures, the healthcare increase, did you say in a prior meeting that was about 4%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So you'll see the estimated FICA increase, which is the benefits for the salary increases. The cost of our health care increase is 4%. The retirement increase is $70,000. We saw a decrease in capital outlay, which is very small. We have other budget increases that we can go through in the second page of the next slide of the PowerPoint. And then there's a decrease in expenditures, which we will detail in the budget book. And so the net increase for expenditures is $1,424,084. And then this is the breakdown of how we built our budget. We talked about the revenue, now we're talking about the expenditure side. You'll see that we had the estimated salaries, which I talked about, and that's as negotiated with our unions. We're transitioning one of our computer techs from 10-month to 12-month, so then we'll have 2 of our techs that are 12-month employees. We're adding 10 additional days to the guidance counselors at the high school.
For each of the 2 guidance counselors?
Yes. 2 of our positions that were paid from grants will be added to the local budget.
What were those 2 positions?
The mental health safety coordinator, mental health and safety coordinator, and our public relations and communications specialist.
No, that was one of the questions that I had. Originally, that position was state funded, correct? The mental health coordinator?
Yes, and we're still required to have that position.
Okay.
But we have to pay for it out of local.
Okay.
That's part of Kerwin. It's a requirement. But essentially, you'll see that in the budget book where it was in there and then it's X'd out because we had a special allocation for that. So that was a requirement. We had monies that were restricted that were added for that particular position. And then the monies went away as far as being restricted, but the requirement is still there for Kerwin. 1 teacher for the deaf and hard of hearing. And then in order to balance our budget, we're reducing 6 teaching positions, which.
So we're hoping it's through retirements and attritions. I'm looking at Mr. Hushin right now. Who do we know?
Same
I mean,
question.
not who, but position-wise,
Are we still
where are
online
we?
with that?
We're getting there. The deadline for non-tenured staff is actually May 1st.
Okay.
Today, I think we're confident that we will be able to do this as stated.
But are we capping at not filling 6, and then anything, if we have any retirements or anything above that, we're still gonna
Well,
fill those positions?
What I'm gonna say is we definitely need to cut 6. Based on where, information that we get through the summer, where the kids end up in terms of once we see where they're at with enrollment, and pre-registration, we may see opportunities to reduce in other areas. And if we can, through attrition and retirements, we will continue to do that. Because my fear is, again, we're using one-time money to build this budget. We're using $775,000 of one-time money. We have to be fiscally sound in terms of looking forward and continuing to look for ways in which we can save dollars in the budget. So if there's a way, for instance, if we see in pre-K that, let's say we get a pre-K resignation in July, and over the summer, we see that we really don't have the pre-K students that we thought we were gonna have, then we won't fill that position. I mean, it's based, a lot of times, we base it on what we know over the summer in terms of where the numbers land. And so, you know, right
So
now, we're
that's-
not.
That's the, probably, I mean, that's the driving criteria if, you know, we don't get the 6. How do we determine who are the rest of that makes up that?
Mr.
If I can just add, there's also a second deadline for tenured staff, which would take us to July 15th.
Right. But I hear what you're saying. You're asking
If we
in
don't
terms
hit
of,
the-
Yeah,
do
I'm
we-
wondering if, you know, we don't get 6 retirements.
or resignations.
Yeah,
both.
yeah, if we don't have 6 people leave voluntarily, how do we, I say we, I don't know if it's you, if it's Mr. Hushin,
Not us.
decide who's next man up, so to speak?
Okay, so if it were to come to that, we can't just do that on our own. We would have to bring forward to the Board of Ed and have you adopt a reduction in force. So you would know about it, and we would have to specifically identify which
Okay,
positions those would be. I don't believe we're gonna be there. I'm not anticipating we're gonna be there, but it's not going to be like, oh, by the way, you heard about it in the community and you knew nothing about it. We would have to come forward to you as a Board of Education and have you approve a reduction in force.
okay.
So if we don't get it through attrition and retirements. FICA increase, you'll see the 7.65% of the total salaries. There's the 4% increase for healthcare, retirement increase, and then the other budgetary increases are the 35,000 for the ed specs that we anticipate we'll need for the high school. We may or may not need that, but we went ahead and put it in the budget just in case. And we increased our building repairs and our utilities. So we kind of put it in building repairs, but it may be for utilities because we are seeing a continual increase. Our buildings are old, we're seeing more repairs that we have to do, and we've exceeded our budget in the last couple of years with building repairs, and also our utilities have increased as well.
Are all of our building repairs / maintenance, are they done in-house? Or,
Not all of them.
okay, because I saw that Mrs. Grotzky went to the commissioners last week asking for some mulch for the Good Seeds garden, and she said she's having difficulty in communication on the school end, and said she was told that, and it could have been the sense that maybe some, you know, like we award a contract for cutting grass, you know, and that could have been that is what was told to her, but she used the word maintenance and said that all those services were contracted out. So,
We contract out to do our mowing, we contract out to do our mulching. We don't, you know, we have
but I
very
mean, I know
small-
we've got a plumber, and so most of our building repairs, short of putting a new roof on, do we try to do in-house? I mean, I don't know how many guys are in that staff, but.
6.
Okay,
We have 6 guys. You know, we tried, there are some plumbing jobs that we can't do internally. So then we have to go out and hire an outside company to help us. It just really depends upon the repair,
okay.
you know. That's all I'll say, is
Okay,
it
no,
just
that
depends.
is, when she made that statement, that
Well,
planted a seed, pardon the expression,
know,
I just wondered,
Well, I went back and I listened to that just simply because I heard about it as well. And I asked the question if we'd been contacted and asked for mulch, and nobody has asked us. I've checked from 3 different people, and nobody has asked us for any mulch. So I don't have an answer for that. You know, I,
I think she was asking for mulch and somebody to do the mulch, because
Oh.
she said
Their
they have,
volunteers are
well, and the garden
up to
club
90,
ladies
yeah.
are between 60 and 90 is what she said, and she says, I can ask them to do this, and I can ask them to do that, but I can't ask a 90-year-old lady to mulch.
okay. Yeah, well, we do not do our own mulching. We contract that out.
Okay.
Dr. Couch, can I ask you a question? So I know in this budget, if the conversation continues about replacing the middle school or whatever that looks like, from an expenditure standpoint, is there anything in this budget that I'm not necessarily certain or sure what the expenses might be, to kind of get that ball rolling, but is there any ideas or anything in here that would help or that we would need to put out or have a
No, I've had conversations with the county in terms of, how much they have to have in terms of planning forward. And we know that if we get to the point of designing a new middle school, that there's going to have to be planning money. We can access some of that money from the Build to Learn Act.
Okay.
And that would be our share for the state portion of the 50%. The county would have to come up with their share, and they've got that in their forecast in terms of capital expenditures. So I think they've got that. When I talk with Mrs. Merritt, I think we pushed it out to FY '25 or '24. I don't have that paperwork in front of me, but we talked about it. We're not prepared to access any of that money next year, because we still have some hoops that we're gonna have to go through with the IAC, and in terms of probably completing the ed specs. But if we start looking at design money and planning, it's probably gonna be in the FY '24 budget.
Okay.
And, realistically, we would not be looking at building anything or renovating anything until FY '25, '26. I mean, it's a long process that you have to get in place by starting with the ed specs, which we started now.
When do you anticipate the decision being made about which direction we're going, and also what grades are gonna be where?
The IAC is coming to our county on May the 6th. They will visit the middle school, they will visit the high school. I'll get a better sense at that point in time what they feel that they could be on the hook to support. I know that we talked about, well, that may not be our decision.
Will
or-
it be more difficult if our decision is not what they support?
Well, it will be if you want money.
Yeah, or maybe it'll be impossible, yeah.
Yeah, if you want money if the state says, in their eyes, that they want us to say they feel better about adding on to the high school and this is what you need to do, and we say, oh, no, we want to do that, we want to move it to this area, and these are these are the grade levels that we want to include, and they say, yeah, that's not what we think you should include, then it's not to say you can't do that, but they're not going to participate in that project to the extent that you would hope they would. So instead of getting 50%, you may only get 30%. And so what would happen is if you don't buy into what they feel is realistic from what the state can support based on state-rated capacity, based on a number of criteria that they set, if we say, well, this is what we want, and our community is not going to support that, then you got to be willing to fund the excess of what they're not willing to fund. You can do whatever you want, as long as you have the money to do it. If you want the state to fully participate, then that's why you have to bring them in and get them on your side and try to get them to see that this is what, this is going to be the best idea. And what we're trying to get them on the hook to support is the fact that to include 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, and what that looks like in terms of, does it include part of the high school? Does it, is it a renovation? Is it a new build? Those are all the things that they're going to have to come, and they're not going to be able to tell me what they can do until they actually look at our facilities. And that's not going to happen until May 6th. So we have a presentation planned. I mean, we've been working on it for the last 3 weeks. And we've got a really nice little graphic in terms of if this, then this. And we're planning on sharing that with them and letting them know what we've discussed so far with the Ed Specs Committee. My hope is, we've got like 6 possibilities. My hope is we'll narrow it down to 3. And
When
then
you
bring.
say "we," you mean we?
Right, the committee.
board?
I mean, the Ed Specs Committee has
Okay.
6 possibilities. What we hope to do is come and narrow that down,
Right.
narrow that down to 3 possibilities, and then bring that to the board, and then share that with you, and then be able to share at that point in time what the state is willing to do. And then what we're gonna have to do after that is then present that to the commissioners, share that information with the commissioners. I mean, we have to have buy-in from not only the state, but we have to have buy-in from the county.
Well, so what if, part of me feels like this is almost putting the cart before the horse, in the sense that the state's gonna come and look and make up their mind, with us not having gotten that far in the process, and wondering if they're hoping to influence
Well,
us.
no, actually, I think this is exactly the right time for
Okay.
them to come in.
Okay.
Because we had to get to a place where we had some idea
Yeah.
of what we want to do. We weren't even at that place when we first started the Ed Specs. Now we've got a good idea. We've had the stakeholders meetings, we had meetings with the community, we had meetings with the administrators, we had meetings with the county and the Board of Ed, we had meetings with the teachers. So we've had a number of stakeholder meetings, and we've got some pretty solid numbers in terms of what it would be to add the 5th grade. You know, what would we do if we did an 8th grade academy? I mean, we've got a lot of information. Now it's a matter of just kind of sorting through and seeing how that all resonates with the state.
So what if, the state
Long is off the
state
subject, but-
and us, and the county's not on board, because we heard 2 completely different opinions that night with the commissioners, Mr. Mason and Mr. Fithians, whose own personal experience had been with like the 8th grade in the high school, and then Mr. Jacob, who's younger, was totally against that.
Right. But what I'm saying is, that's where we have to wait and see what the state comes through. What the
Okay.
state might actually, there's still this possibility that the state will say, add on to the high school, but I'm just gonna throw out an idea. But it's gonna be 5, 6, 7, 8, and it's gonna have its own entrance, it's gonna have its own building within the building, and you're going to then utilize some of the existing space at the high school, but it's going to be its own little
Yeah,
entity.
I took us down the rabbit hole, and I apologize, because Joe asked the question. There's nothing in this budget to
No.
worry about. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
there's nothing in this budget to
Okay.
worry about that. Okay. All right. The budget analysis, you'll see we're not asking for an increase from the county. There's the state aid increase. You'll see the increase in fund balance. That's what we're using of our fund balance to build this budget. The total expenditures in terms of the increases, and then we'll have approximately 161,000 left in this budget. And I propose that we hold on to that in terms of waiting to see, what transpires in terms of, if we don't need it, then we're gonna need to save it, because we're gonna need it in FY 2024.
Dr. Couch, the 887,695 increase in state aid, what are the strings attached to that?
That's just the state aid, isn't it? Or is that the Kerwin money?
That is all of the state revenue that we are expecting to receive from the state, from foundation to the additional, I wouldn't want to say totally blueprint, but some that's added to the blueprint, like the college and career readiness and that of the like. So that breakdown that you saw with the revenues, that basically is the total amount. That breakdown will show you where that state funding is exactly coming from.
If you go to slide where it says the FY '23 revenue breakdown, that's where it all adds up to the 887.
Okay.
You see that? It's
Yes.
got all the details there, and it shows you exactly where it's coming from. You can see the increases, the decreases, and then the final number adds up to the 887,000.
All right, thank you.
This is the capital, this is the capital budget request that we shared with the county. This is for the re-roofing of Kent County High School. This is, this was in their capital budget that they presented. It breaks it down into the years, but this is an easier slide to read. The total county share for the roof replacement at Kent County High School is $4,126,200. For FY '23, the amount is $3,099,150, and in FY '24, it's $1,027,050. So that is what they have in their budget for FY '23 and '24 for the roof project.
And the roof project was sort of the last item on the 6-year facility strategic plan.
Right.
So do
Yeah.
we need to now start the next 6-year
Yeah.
facility strategic plan?
I think right now, we need to get through the middle school
Yeah.
aspect of it. I'm very proud of the fact that that this board took it upon ourselves to come up with that strategic plan and outline all of the projects that we wanted to have done in our schools, and we've methodically been able to check off and say, yes, this was done, this was done. We finished Galena Elementary renovation and roof HVAC replacement, so that's completed now. Now we'll replace the roof. Now, as you'll recall, the reason why it's broken up into two years is because we cannot arguably replace the roof at the high school in 1 year. It's too big. So we'll break it in half or close to half, and we'll do half of it 1 year and then half of it the next. We actually had our first pre-construction meeting this morning and met with the new contractor, the new project manager, and they're ready to go. They're coming tomorrow to do some core samples to make sure what it is they're dealing with in terms of the materials that they need to order. The roofing materials are there. What they need to do, their core samples, is to determine whether they need fasteners or they need screws or exactly what other kinds of supplies they need to get. And their plan is to start as soon as the kids are out. You'll probably start to see some staging of materials that'll start being delivered sometime the middle of May. And we already shared where we want them to put their trailer, where we want them to start storing their supplies, where they're going to start fencing things off. And we are moving summer school for the high school. That will be at the middle school, so that we can pretty much have that facility empty while they work on the roof.
Great.
So, with that, I will take any questions, and Ms. Stewart can come up and talk about, or you can do it from there if you like. We could talk a little bit about where we found the savings, or we allocated some additional dollars with the budget handbook. And I'll turn it over to Ms. Stewart.
Are we taking questions or?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I didn't know, okay.
Okay, sorry.
Page 3 of the budget handbook, these numbers for our restricted programs, these are firm numbers for the?
No.
No, okay.
So with restricted, this slide, this page, you would need to note that it's based on estimated numbers, meaning that we do not know exactly what we're going to get in '23. However, what we do is we note what is going to be requested for '23. We base it off of what we've been awarded for the current fiscal year, and in this case, it would be what we received so far for fiscal year '22, and any carryover that was approved for fiscal year '21 to be expended in '22. So this page in the budget book, always going forward, to keep in mind, these are estimated numbers, and that's why we note that there are estimates. Because like you would see, if you go down to the state funding with the Maryland Blueprint for Maryland's Future, students with disabilities, that's something that we're not receiving in Blueprint, and then you'll see the mental health coordinator. So you see those changes where we know what we're not going to receive. Some we do know, but for the most part, these are just estimated numbers based on what was before. But I will say they're as of current, most recent. In the past, it looked like everything wasn't included. So when you approve the budget, you'll be approving pretty much all of the restricted funding that we have so far to date.
So we're not going to have a mental health coordinator?
We
We
are.
do have it, but we're just
We're
saying
having
that
to
that
pay for it.
was a part of the funding that they didn't say.
Yeah, that's one of the grant positions that's being moved into the local budget.
I've got a question. It's under contracted services, the contract.
Which page?
Sorry, it's on, I guess it's on page 13.
There you go.
And it's specifically about CAP and high roads. Is the alternative program only for high school students?
No, it's
Okay.
middle school students too.
All middle school
No.
students, or is it based on age, like 14 to 18 or
It's,
something? Okay.
it's the older students. It would just be for the 8th grade if we needed a student to go to CAP from the middle school. But mainly it is, historically, it's been for just the high school students.
Okay, and I noticed that it's holding steady for the last couple of years, but there was a $50,000 decrease from 2020 to 2021. Was that based on
Bid.
number of, okay. The
That was
bid,
based
okay,
on the
yeah,
bid that you all approved at one of
Right.
your board meetings.
yeah. So, in the contract, does it specify the ages or the grade levels, or is that just we decide who we're gonna?
It's our program.
Okay. Yeah.
You don't have anything for tuition of out-of-county placements?
So that's not in the budget. Essentially, it's one of those costs that are variable that we don't know. We do pay for those, but that normally happens at the end of the fiscal year when everything has been allocated and accounted for, when we get the invoices from the different counties.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have. Sorry. Page 9. I was just curious, looking at, not nitpicking, but just curious. Our subscription and dues went up in the administration category, and I was just curious.
So essentially, when I went through the budget, some adjustments were made. The budget book just wasn't updated. So some of the adjustments I've made in the budget book, everything that you see is basically a mix of what we have redistributed to some in materials of instruction, some based on negotiated agreements, and then some where when distributing out the budgets, this is the budget amount that has been used and been given to everyone for their category. So it brings it to current, so you actually can see when I hand out the budget what everyone's getting specifically. But that was a part of it, and that I think was taken from supplies and materials, so the supplies and materials are contracted services and moved into other charges.
The big drop, I'm on that same page.
Mhm.
The big drop in equipment rental, which is Xerox and stuff like that, those are the savings from
Centric.
Going to Centric.
the change in the contract
Yes.
that you found for us, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Bill and I.
Yes,
He helped
Bill.
with it.
But anyhow, I think you're the one that brought it to us, but anyhow.
Is there money in the budget for, as we begin to think more and more about community outreach, where would I find money as for promotional things, marketable things as we go down the line? Where would that be?
It's nothing necessarily specific that will go into your materials and supplies, depending, if there's promotional, let's just say we're doing recruiting, that's going to come out of recruiting. If there's other items that's needed, that's going to come out of the supervisor budget as far as whatever allocated for their materials and supplies.
Next question I had was page 13. Blended Learning Academy. I see we have a drop there of half.
So what I did with this is that initially it was 70,000. I divided it in half between contracted services and then salaries, because I don't believe that the whole $70,000 is included for all salaries. There are some contractual services that go to that. I don't know necessarily specifically, but we adjusted that to account for that, and then we're going to look going forward to see how that kind of intertwines. But so I did that just to make it more accurate, because there were questions about, there's $70,000 in salaries, but technically the KBLA budget encompassed everything, not just the salaries. So dividing that just brought that also to current.
Thank you. This is a question for Dr. Couch. Evening high school. How many of our students actually participate in evening high school?
We asked that question the other day for Ms. Hemstetter, and I think she said that she has probably about 20 students that, yeah, she said up to 20, not all on one day, but, a variety of, some days you might see 6 kids that are there, others, but about 20.
Okay.
Are you done?
I have more, but go ahead, Dr. Goss. Again, on page 13, I was concerned about, was just curious about the breakdown between how much our teachers, I know some, back in the older days, when I was first started out, each teacher was given about approximately $250 to spend to their classroom. Didn't know if there was a firm number that our teachers get for classroom materials of instruction each year.
The money's allocated to the school, and then the school makes a decision in terms of how to allocate it to the teachers. So it could look like that, a set amount that goes to each teacher. It could go to departments. It could go to grade levels. It could be, just request it, and if you need it, we'll get some for you. One of the things that we noted as we were closing down some of our schools, we had lots of supplies that were in cupboards and not really utilized. So I think, it just depends upon what the philosophy is at that particular school.
Okay.
I do know that in past years, that was the kind of thing that would get cut at the end of it when you really needed to count every penny and nickel. There would be an increase in the per pupil allocation or whatever, and then by the end of the budget cycle, it didn't exist. And we're always hearing about teachers who are dipping into their own pockets to make sure that their students have supplies.
Well, I know that one of the hopes with the foundation is teacher grants, and
Yeah.
hopefully we can get that up and running.
Our
Okay,
hope
help
is
with
to
that.
get that up and running summer. Summer's our goal.
Yes, good.
Can I just ask a question? On page 14 regarding computer equipment, I see there's a drop of $30,000. Is that just because we're in a spot where we've replaced and equipment is new? I know we went through kind of a purge, if you will, of replacement. I mean, why would we see the drop?
No, that is just reallocation of funding. So with technology, we have a portion coming out of equipment. As you would see same page, the software license and training is increasing 30,000 because essentially that brings it more to current and what technology has to spend on softwares and licensing. And I have to pull that at the end anyway to meet the overage in the softwares and licensing. So down into equipment, you'll see the deficit of the 30,000. So that's just reallocating.
Got it. Thank you.
So basically, just putting it in the place that it was
That it
going
should
to
be, yeah.
anyways.
Yep, makes sense.
How are we doing, because another thing that's been cut from the budget the last couple of years is furniture. So we're still trying to get caught up with that, aren't we?
Right. We have $200,000 allocated to furniture from ESSER, and we were talking to the principals about that at our last meeting. We'll probably be bringing to you a recommendation to approve a vendor to piggyback off of another school system. And we've already sent the information to our principals, and they're already, perusing through the catalog to see what it is they want. What I asked each one of the principals to do is to begin to prioritize in terms of what they need. Some schools really need tables, others need teacher desks, others need,
I think it was eye-opening to us when we took that tour of the middle school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trying to get into one of those desks.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
So what we
Chromebook on an angle.
Yeah, so what we asked them is to just look at their needs and prioritize. Some, like Garnett, they want desks for their older students because their desks are small. And whether they do desks or go with desk or they go with, there's so many neat ways in which they're designing school furniture now to where you can have desks that actually go together and make like a giant table, but it's flexible seating, so you can pull it apart and then you can actually have your own space. So they're looking at all of that that's available to them and see where we go. The biggest challenge that we're gonna have is that we're ending late, so we're ending the middle of June and we're starting early. So we're not starting post Labor Day. So we're going to we've got summer schools that are happening, we've got projects that we have to get accomplished, and then we're gonna have to try to order the furniture and then dispose of the old furniture, because there's no way, some of it just needs to be trashed, I mean, it's that bad condition. But we're gonna have to figure out a way and how to dispose, that's our challenge that we're gonna have in terms of making that transition from old to new. But we'll figure it out.
I don't recall there being a contract brought to us this year at all for any of digital devices. Will there, like laptops, or will we have are we on a recycle year or anything like that this
We're
year?
good.
Okay.
We're good. I was trying to think, no, I don't think we brought one to you. Yep, we're caught up. Next question?
Mine was about legal services. This is a flat number.
What page?
Page 7. So is that how much we spend every year, and it's always comes out?
That's how much we've allocated every year. We've not necessarily spent it every year.
But in trend data, we have been over budget every year in legal services.
Yeah.
And looking at that. And that is the case in other budget lines in the budget book. We're not able to do much with it. So that's why, it's constantly looking at the budget, monitoring those things, because there's other areas that we can't, there's nothing you can do about it. It's been over in trend data, so we just try to keep an eye on that.
Right.
Okay, that's my,
I noticed that the contract for CAP shows up it shows up in more than one place. That's
Okay.
Yeah.
my question. It shows up on page 13 under other instructional costs, and it shows up on page 17 under special education.
It's because a portion of it is paid for out of special
Okay.
education.
Are there any other places I'll see it?
No.
No.
Okay.
Dr. Couch, several people have asked me about the possibility of the schools partnering with parks or the county or on our own to make sure that the SEEK continues. You've
I was
heard
gonna bring
this.
that up also, yeah.
Where are we on that? Is there anything that we're gonna do to help SEEK continue?
So one of the things that I would say is we absolutely, as a school system, we absolutely support the program in terms of its value. One of the things that we're grappling with at the moment is our capacity for administering the program itself. You know, we've got the Maryland, we've got Kerwin that we're going to have to implement, and all of those tenants that we're going to have to be responsible for, which are not, they're not small, they're large. In addition to that, we've got the Maryland Leads Grant, which is going to be a fairly large grant. It could be up to $6 million. We've got 2 years to spend it, and it's focused on reading, the science of reading and tutoring and volunteers, and it's going to be a big project.
Can
We're
we
s-
be assured that we're gonna get any of that, any money from them?
It's non-competitive.
Okay,
We're non-competitive, and we know for certain that we're getting 2 million. We can get up to
Okay.
6 million, and we should be finding out, we should be finding out, I think Gina said that we should know something May 4th, right?
Yeah, they're starting the review process next week. So we should have some updates then.
Yeah.
I've been
So,
following
I
that
mean,
also.
I feel like we have to be honest about where we're going to put all of our attention. I just don't,
Is it correct that Parks and Rec actually presented a budget that covered the cost for that?
yes.
It did, and it was recently on the 14th, I think, and after listening to it, it sort of came down to, they also want to talk to the school. And I mean, I think, I don't know how we could make it work. I think that finding a way to partner is great, and I mean, I think that the school is invested in the SEEK program. I mean, I think that their curriculum and what they have provided, what Wayne and his educators have provided to our schools is amazing. And you know, before I was on the board, when I was helping during the pandemic to locate learning hubs, SEEK was, we called about 60 local organizations and churches to see if they could be learning hubs, and only a handful came back, and SEEK was one of them. And those kids probably still want to go back to Sassafras instead
It
of
was
being in
very
school.
good.
Yeah, it was a
That-
very nice
it was
program.
very
And Wayne and his educators have always been very accommodating, so I would love to find a way to move forward with that, and if it's not something that we can work into the budget this year, maybe it's something we can consider in the future to, talk to the county about, maybe we can flip-flop or something. But I think it'll come up at our budget presentation on the 10th, is that right? Okay.
I agree. I'd love to see us ensure that it continues.
Right.
Outdoor education
One of
is
the
gonna be
things that
more
I,
important.
again, I hesitate a little bit because we're going to be faced with a lot of challenges coming up. Remember, we were held harmless with the county MOE. So had that legislation not passed, we would have seen a $487,000 reduction in our budget. So we would have had to cut more than 6 positions. We would have had to cut probably 12 positions.
And the number that Parks and Rec threw out for the program was around 200,000 for the program, so
So, and
not insignificant amount.
And keep in mind, we're also using $775,000 of one-time
Fund
money
balance.
to build this budget. So we've got this looming MOE that we don't know what's gonna happen. You also heard the news that USA Fulfillment is closing. We have a number of our parents that work at USA Fulfillment. I don't know if that means they're gonna leave the area. Maybe we'll get people that will wanna be bus drivers, maybe they'll wanna be substitutes, I don't know. But there's that possibility in terms of we could see a further reduction in our enrollment. So I don't know what that's going to do to our budget moving forward. I think we have to be very cautious about making assumptions and adding additional programs and focus areas that we have to be looking towards when we have a lot of unknowns that we have to be considered, be mindful of and think about moving forward. So I value SEEK. I think it's a wonderful program. Went back and listened to Mr. Gilchrist's presentation to the county, and he specifically asked for the 2 positions to be paid for by the county. When Mr. Gilchrist presented here, he wanted us to go on the record saying that we supported the program, which we do. But I think that's where I'm at right now in terms of I just don't know that we have the capacity to assume that liability.
Even if the county paid for the positions?
Well, if they
If they
pay
can
for the
pay for it,
positions, then it's their program.
Is there any, I haven't gone through everything, is there anything in here for a volunteer coordinator?
It's in the Maryland Leads grant.
Okay, because through the Citizens Advisory Committee, that's,
Right.
as
One of
you
the
know,
questions.
Right.
is getting a lot of
Well,
juice.
There were like 5 areas in the Leads grant?
yeah, there were
that was
5.
the
We
focus?
reviewed the Leads grant at the last budget, at the last board meeting. And one of the things that we talked about was that in the Maryland Leads grant, we did have a position or an oversight of the volunteers. And actually, Mr. Hushin was saying that with one of the positions that he would have in the grant, which is a human resource specialist, because we really feel that at some point with all of these volunteers that are coming into our schools, we need to start thinking about, we need to be focused on having them complete background investigations, because we can't continue to have all of these volunteers in our schools and we haven't completed the process that we do for any other employees.
I think that's really necessary.
Yeah.
I think so
And,
too.
and
And-
so I think we've kind of reached this tipping point, if you will, that we have to be considerate of where we move forward and the protection of our students in terms of having all these volunteers in our school. And it makes sense if we're going to be processing them through HR to get fingerprinted and to get those background checks, it makes sense that perhaps that person would be the one that would oversee the volunteers themselves.
You know, that just begs, sorry, but that begs the question: what have we been doing in the past for?
We've been doing the Maryland checks, but we haven't been doing the federal and the
Okay.
and the actual background investigation, the full-fledged background investigation. So, you know, we're going to have to be mindful. I mean, we've got the AAEEBB, the program that we have with our black boys, that program. I don't know that all of those mentors have been gone through the fingerprinting as well. So we're just going to have to just be very mindful in terms of what we're doing, keeping a better count in terms of what volunteers are actually working in our schools. And I think it makes sense to have one person be the point person in terms of making sure that everything is done by the book with regard to the adults that are coming into our schools.
And I think you need a volunteer coordinator also because if it's just done at the school level, I mean, when before I got on the board, I volunteered as a reading tutor. And, you know, I had to drive 10 miles each way to get to the school. And I bet 20% of the time, you know, the kids were practicing for a play or they were on a field trip or I couldn't volunteer. And it just seemed like and I know that other volunteers got kind of discouraged at that.
Well, I would say that we've gotten a lot more sophisticated with regard to how we're using our volunteers and the tutors in terms of, you know, you saw what was happening at Rock Hall Elementary.
Yeah, they were very happy with that.
Very happy and the focus. I mean, with all of the monies that we've seen coming into the district for TSI, for all of our tutoring programs, and also we've got it written into the Leads grant as well. We're going to have a number of adults in our buildings, and we just need to be a lot more focused in terms of how we're dealing with all of the adults in our buildings.
One thing you may find if you have a lot of senior volunteers is that it's very hard to get fingerprints from them because their fingerprints have worn down. And I had to be fingerprinted to be a foster parent, and I had to go back 3 times, and they finally said, we guess you haven't been arrested, so.
I hope
But-
not.
Thanks for the heads up, Wendy.
There's special tools and techniques, and we have an updated
You can.
system that helps combat some of those issues. Yes, those issues do occur, but we ensure that the fingerprints get done.
We mash those fingers in there. Okay, more questions?
Yes, going back to page 13. Media Center, what, in addition to books, what other supplies or materials would a media center need? I'm just curious, in addition to books.
That's pretty much anything that's needed to assist them with providing the educated needed when they're having, library time or it's time for media. So outside of books, it will be in addition to that.
I wish we would go back to calling them libraries. You go in them, and that's really what they are. Kids have their own computers, so it's not really a media center. I think library's a better word.
Page 14, Discovery Education. One of a school district, the one I work in as well, they did away with a contract similar. My question would be, how much usage is this platform receiving?
We actually do use it quite a bit. This is the streaming, so we use it for our science curriculum. We had been using the digital books there for a while for math. We weren't seeing the success that we needed, so we abandoned that aspect of it and have a new math curriculum, which is the illustrative math that we're using now. But, Discovery Education, we are utilizing that. And they also provide areas where teachers can get lesson plans for a variety of content areas as well. So do they all use it to the degree that they should? I wouldn't say that they do that 100%, but it is part of our math curriculum.
Okay, thank you. Page 14 again. Teacher incentives. Could you maybe explain what that
Yes.
looks like? And also the student incentives as well.
So those were 2 items that we added in the budget. Teacher incentives is also including support staff as well. The principals were inquiring about how they could help, provide incentives for their team, their teachers, their support staff to keep them motivated, to keep them encouraged. They do have school funds that they can use, but we wanted to add in the budget just to show essentially our appreciation and help the principals create that for the teachers. So if they wanted to buy them, shirts or hats or different things just to show appreciation, it will be divided evenly between all 5 schools. And that's the same with student incentives. The school funds, as you know, is there for the students, but as well, that $1,000 will be used for student incentives to encourage our students or fidgets that they have out now. If they wanted to buy, certain things for their students just to continue to help along with the transition due to the pandemic.
That's $1,000 divided among the 5 schools?
Yes.
Not much.
It's not much, yes.
I'm going to jump to the back of the book for a sec. I know the food service is supposed to be self-sufficient, so do you anticipate having to raise meal costs?
No.
Okay. How's our participation in our food services? I mean, we all remember a couple years ago that, was it cheesy bread? What the heck was that? Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Frankenfood.
All of a
Let's not
sudden,
go there.
nobody wanted to eat. So, I mean, is it pretty being a high participation or?
Well, it's everybody can eat for free right now still. We're
Oh,
still in
really?
the pandemic,
Oh,
yeah.
goodness, okay.
So next year is when they have to go back to filling out the free and reduced lunch forms,
That's right.
which we're gonna have another challenge in terms of making sure, because if the parents don't complete the form, then they won't get their free and reduced lunch.
Is there a way to, I mean, we hear about the rec leagues and all that are, they have the website or the, not the Google poll, but a way to do that for parents to have access to
Oh, the online?
online sign up, just so that it, I mean,
Oh,
I don't
for
know how
the farms?
complicated that is,
Well,
but
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, I remember asking about this also, that there isn't an online form that's been developed for farms yet.
it just may help boost that enrollment, if you will, to get
Yeah.
another option.
Yeah.
To speak to that, I've been working with Bill to try to get a printable form and so that we can do something online so that it can be easier for everyone to access, so that they can fill out the forms online. So that's something that we are discussing, working
Gotcha.
together to try to help and hopefully get the
Yeah.
feedback that we need for that.
Yeah, we want to try to get it in such a format. The interesting thing about it, it's not just, we have to get it approved by MSDE as well, because it has to be their exact form.
Yeah.
And so I know that a prior food service supervisor that we had tried to get that approved, and we just kept going through red tape, and just couldn't get it approved. Well, so we'll take another hit at it and see what we can do, but,
I'll do a little legwork also and see if any of the other school districts have developed
oh,
anything.
that's good too.
So I'll
Yeah.
take a look.
But I do know that there is a form, the form we have to use is for the current school fiscal year. So we can't do anything before 6:30 because MSDE is not going to put out the next year form until July. So
Gotcha.
that's part of the reason why we can't really do anything in advance because of that.
So I have a question to pivot in a different area. On page 14 at the very top, under athletics, it's listing Washington College pool as the pool. I'm assuming, I mean, that is the rental line item. Have we migrated to the YMCA?
And we pay for that.
And-
Or
and
I
is
think
that-
I don't know if we pay for that or not.
I
Is it-
don't think so, not yet. I think that that's something anticipated maybe for
Yeah.
the following year.
So we're not certain what that looks like.
We
So
don't.
you're saying
Not
that
of
this
yet.
year, we're probably okay with what the numbers are, but that could fluctuate, that could change.
Yeah.
Okay.
I know I was approached by one of the commissioners during the ribbon cutting of the YMCA and asked if we were planning on using it. And at that time, I did not know, and I
We
found, and
use-
I know, I found
Okay.
out that we were, and so then I contacted him the next day, because I spoke with Mr. Taylor, and he said, yep, they were actually planning on doing that. Well, the commissioner said something about, well, they would not have a problem contributing if it helped the school system. So I don't know, I really don't know where that's gonna fall. I think that's kind of like a,
Is that pool the right size for races?
yes, for our
We
races,
competed
yes.
there this year, once
I
the
know
pool
we did.
opened, yeah.
It was pretty electric
You
when you had
can't-
QA and Kent County in there. I mean, it was awesome.
You can't train lifeguards in that pool, but
It's
you
not
can
deep
have.
enough.
It's not deep enough, but you can have races.
Any additional questions?
Oh, yes. Back to page 14. I'm so sorry.
Fine.
The Kent County Middle School Interscholastic Sports, that wasn't a one-time, was it always going to be 18,000 every year?
That was I think.
It wasn't
the
just a one-time
assumption
cost
that-
for startup?
Or what, which one now?
This
The
is for
sports at the middle school, I would thought maybe I might have missed.
No, it's
every
continuing, yes.
every year. Okay. I have a few more questions. I'm sorry.
You're fine.
Oh, okay. Looking at page 22, you kind of alluded to this, Dr. Couch, and I guess my question was again about the mental health coordinator, and that was coming at one time in Kerwin, and now back into our school system at a higher rate than it was in the. Is that just because of salary changes? Okay. Page 23. I was under the impression that we were, at one budget session about the driver trainer. Was that never, did we ever decide on that? I see it there, but I see no figure. I know that was a request of Mr. Wheeler at one time.
Yeah, we don't have it. We do pay for someone to help us, but we pay for it as needed. That was supposed to be a full-time driver trainer, but we didn't.
Okay, thank you.
That's not in this budget.
Next question was about bus contractors. Just curious about how many bus contractors we have that are outside of the school system.
I want to say it's about
I
4.
want to say 4.
4? Okay. Thank you. Coming along.
3 of them are just single contracts, like a contractor,
Okay.
a single contractor. And
Yes.
then we have one contractor that has, I think, 2 buses. That,
I see that in the miscellaneous on page 30, under the refinishing of the floors. Last year we allocated 18,000. This year we're allocating 33,000. I just wanted to know why the change.
So 2 reasons. Last year, we were able to get the painting done for the gym, but there was an issue that happened where the painting cost increased, so we had to cover for that. And when we went to go look to get the refinishing for the 3 elementary gym floors, they already had a year out that we could get that done. So because we got the other half done with the painting, now everything is going towards the elementary school gym. And we're looking to get that done, I think, probably as early as, I think, June going into July. So that's the reason for that.
Thank you. Page 31, tuition reimbursement. Just, I see 75,000. I wanted to know what the rate was per credit.
It's actually inside, outlined in each one of our
contracts.
negotiated agreements for support staff. It is $300 per credit. For teachers, it's $250 a credit, up to 12 credits each year. And for admin, there is for pursuit of a doctoral degree, there is a 6-credit full reimbursement equivalent to the University of Maryland fees, and any 6 credits after that in a year is reimbursed at $250 a credit.
Can you say that all again? I lost you when we went to the administrative. So,
So for the admin, as per their contract, in pursuit of a doctoral degree, they could get up to 6 credits, fully reimbursed, equivalent at the University of Maryland doctoral rate per credit. So if a cost per credit is up to $600 at UMD, then they get up to $600 for only 6 credits. Any additional coursework after that is up to $250 a credit.
and teachers again?
$250 a credit, up to 12 credits each year.
So once they max out the 12 credits, they can't
Yep,
get.
they're
But
done.
it renews each year.
Yes,
Up to 12
understood.
credits each year.
Understood.
But you're asking the same amount that you've been asking the last few years, right?
Yeah, well, I was just curious. I was just trying to.
Well, we don't ever know it. We never know or have a great feel for how many are actually going to take classes. So we need, that is a liability in terms of we have to be prepared to pay for those if they request reimbursement.
Aren't more teachers probably going to go back to school because there's an incentive to get national board?
Yeah, but that's not college credit.
Who's going to pay for that?
That's a good question.
And that's something that we are, that when we presented on the LEADS grant budget, that is something we're trying to address at least over the next few years.
Just an average. I was just curious. Just an average. How many do we usually see tuition reimbursements come in?
I don't know that directly off the top of my head, but I do know that we're close. We're consistently over budget in our course reimbursement. It varies is what we're over budget, but that may help in that.
I can tell you that we process this 3 times a year, and the average is somewhere between 25 to 35 employees, not credits, but employees that take advantage of this.
So I heard it say we're over budget. To the point, because I enjoyed what you said about incentivizing our teachers. I would love to, if possible, to see some of this money, not discrediting that our teachers need to go back to school, but some of this money that maybe if we're significantly, I'm not saying significantly over budget, taking some of that money and putting it towards some of those teacher incentives and student incentives. I think that would like to see money go to that, because as Dr. Costa said, you're asking to spend $1,000 between 5 different schools. By the time you pay 250, that just me. That's not enough.
Right, but the you have to look at, schools have another set of pot of money. That's their school funds. And if you look at the audit between 5 schools, there's about $174,000.
Okay.
So that's why it's not as much, because they do have money essentially. We're just, kind of encouraging through local, and I mean, looking at that as we go along, but that's kind of the idea behind that.
And just to remind us all, that is a contractual issue inside each negotiated agreement.
I'm not saying change the rate. I'm just saying change how much we put to the. I mean, that's not contractual. The rate's contractual, but the money we take to this is that I think maybe we could use it in other places. I just feel like we go through the budget cycle every year and we remain the same, but maybe this is what I need to help me is I know we go through how much we spend every month, but maybe it might be beneficial for me to see how much we run close to each year and match that. I feel like we did do that one time where we looked to see how much we budgeted and where we were within the year, and seeing what that comparison tool. Maybe that's something is that possible?
Well, I did that in February when I did the
Okay.
7-year review. It was very detailed. It showed you everything. The issue that you have is that's why we have to look at fund balance every year closely, because some of the adjustments I can't make because they vary. So you might have in fiscal year 15 and 16, $10,000 over budget, 17, 18, we're $2,000 over budget, 19, 20, we're now $20,000 over budget. You can't, you're just gonna have to kind of pull from, and that's another thing in the budget, where we save from, we're pulling from something, we're using that to handle situations such as in this case. And this is not, what I've added and increased is very small, because there's plenty budget lines that honestly it varies.
I understood. Maybe you just could resend that February presentation.
You can get it, you can access that off of Board Docs.
Word docs. Yeah, that's a lot of work. But I can do that. It just would help me, and I should have went back to it. That's my fault. I should have went back to it. I just when I sit here and I'm like, I'll have all these questions, and then I'm wondering. Last question from me. Page 35, going back to the food service. I was just curious. I just wanted to know what the difference between what a supervisor did and then what a support supervisor was. And I see where we're raising that. Well, we took that line out, but we still had the support supervisor. So I was just curious what the difference.
I believe just from history, at one point in time, we had a supervisor, but I think like 3 or 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. So that position just wasn't filled, and so you have the support supervisor and then myself that assists with running food service. And
Okay.
also, this is estimated as well. I did not touch this for a reason being that we're now essentially, how I've been saying is like now being fully operational because we don't have any waivers. We don't have anything coming down from the state saying that they're going to waive us to still have free meals. So this will kind of be my first go around actually seeing food service operate fully. I will say we've been doing good with a la carte, with having, getting the snacks, and that's kind of the other revenue generator, but I can't fully provide to you those specific details, because another thing that goes into food service with anticipating that is inventory. And I think I don't know until like when the auditors come how inventory, sometimes that also helps us with our food service. So that's kind of, everything is kind of kept the same to anticipate that, but my goal is to look at that for this upcoming year to see what is going to be the real impact for us now going forward.
Okay.
I'm still a little confused about how much are we spending on out-of-district placement for special education students, private schools for them?
There's
It's in
budget-
there, I saw it.
Where is it?
It's budgeted,
I thought it said 500-some thousand.
it's 575,000 that is budgeted for special education. Currently now we had 4 non-publics. Currently now we have 3. If Dr. King still is, it's 3 non-publics that we have, but the budget for that is $575,000.
And that's just for 4 students?
3.
3 students. And that money comes from our local budget, or where do we get it?
A portion comes from our local budget based on the formula, the other portion the state covers.
It's on page 18.
Yeah, I see. It just seems like an exorbitant amount of money for 3 students. Is there any incentive for these non-public schools to keep their costs down? What if they said they're going to double it? Would have to pay that?
There's actually legislation that they are increasing their coverage so that salaries are matching public.
Yeah, John Willems said that at the MABE meeting, so it's going to go up. Yep.
Is any of that residential? Or this placement residential? I'm sorry, what?
Don't.
We don't.
Not have any residential students.
Okay.
So it's over $100,000 a year per student for just day. But is there any accountability? I mean, do we know, do they become self-sufficient, or what? What?
Most of our children who are in non-public are significantly covered
Yeah?
with needing significant supports.
What is it that costs so much?
The cost of the school,
Yeah. Well over $100,000 a year per kid.
there's quite a bit that goes into it. So related services, so that could be speech, PT, OT, counseling. Could be also our vision services, our deaf and hard of hearing services. Could also be, it's the cost of being on the teacher. So most of our children who go to non-public also require an inclusion, one-to-one supervision throughout the day. They also, I mean, there's costs that are built in. Each non-public has a different per day cost. And these students are usually 220 teams.
And we have to drive them in a bus, right? Or van?
Yes.
So can you choose which non-public placement they'd go to? Or you can make, and how far away are they?
So we use Benedictine, which is down in Caroline County. We use Short Haven, which is in Cecil County. We also use a non-public in Anne Arundel County. Depending on how far they go, and cuts into the formula for transportation, to consider do they need a residential IEP because they cannot handle that local cost.
Yeah. But we don't have any in residential now.
Are there any additional questions from the board members?
No, just not a question, but One of the things that I was looking on some schools, I know this might be a hard ask, but one thing I was looking on some other school system websites was on their website they had as we begin to think, because folks would like to know where is the money going. That's essential. That's something that comes up every year. And they assume, the money's going here, there, and everywhere. One of the things that they had on their website was like taking this pie chart, and they had that as like a clickable link where you could click administration, take administration out, and they could see that this is where the money was going for instruction. So I don't know how hard that would be, but something to consider about maybe adding to our website that is a little bit, not essentially always just a budget document, but a little user-friendly for other folks. But thank you for presenting the budget and the work that's been done.
Do we have any further comments or statements, questions?
Maybe I'll just ask for the public, the time frame here. I know you and Dr. Couch have a meeting, the day after we meet, right?
10th, yep.
So is the expectation we'll approve it like on the 9th, and then the next day you go to the commissioners? Okay.
Yes. Right.
With a final review the night before, correct?
Yeah. We will have met the night before.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of different counties do it different ways. Like in Talbot, they have to provide their county with a budget in January. And in many cases, they don't know what that number is going to be like, so they have to guess. And then they have to go back and revise. We typically turn ours in late, just simply because that works with our county.
Well, we're not as late as Queen Anne's. They're not even having their public hearings until sometime next month. They have 3, one in each part of the county, so.
That concludes our presentation of the budget.
Okay. The next item on the agenda is public comment on fiscal year '23 budget. Ms. Manley, do we have any? Okay.
Did you,
Mr. Rhodes?
did you sign a form? Go ahead and come up, and then you can turn in a form.
Yes. I just want to make, for a comment, Kent County Board of Education rules for public participation. Speakers should limit their comments to 3 minutes. Comments about the actions or statements of individual staff members are not appropriate for public comments and should be referred to the superintendent of schools or processed through available channels. If submitting written testimony, speakers are requested to provide a copy to the president. Please remember that this is an opportunity for the community to address their comments to the board. It is not an opportunity for dialogue. If you have any questions that need an answer, please contact the superintendent or write a letter to the Board of Education, and a response will be sent back. This is a 3-minute comment period, and I will advise when 30 seconds are left.
Is it starting
Thank you.
now? First of all, about the fingerprinting. About 2 months ago, I came in to, they were going to have a mentoring program, and there was no request to get fingerprinting, so I just came up here and got it done. But a lot of people aren't required to do it, so I just did it because I wanted to do it. And also, I've walked around the school when I'm there, and sometimes there are some doors that are unlocked. I noticed that. Electric vehicles, I would really be careful about that right now because we don't know where that's going. With the different politicians coming in, that whole thing could go away. The leaky roof, I didn't know you were raising money for that budget, but I've been going through the halls and there's cans, there's leaks in the ceilings. Couldn't you, like the KAP, Mrs. Philippe, I spoke to her and she was wondering if I could build like a raised garden, and I said, that's great, but could we try to fix up the outside of the school itself? Could some of those guys be used in there to go mulch and plant plants? And I don't know if you have how you do all that kind of stuff, but the school could use so much. It could be spruced up with not a whole lot of money when people come with flowers and plants. I had another idea, like, you can get like nice old furniture that's nice looking, the darker furniture, like sideboards for hardly no money. And wouldn't it be neat to put just maybe some old furniture like in the dining room, just something different, just a thought. I was looking where the teachers, they have a little room they go to. It'd be neat to spruce that up with some older furniture. I think with your $1.8 million, it would be great. Could the teachers get a small bonus? I don't know how many teachers there are. Could they get like maybe $200 bonus or $300. Well, you have all that money sitting there. I just don't know how your budget, I know you're tight on the budget. It would be great to give them all some money. I understand that 500,000, or no, excuse me, the 1.8 million should be a minimum at 500,000, but not to excess of 5% of your budget. Is that money, is that legally the way it's done? I mean, you have all that extra money in there. Could it be used for other things, or does it have to be saved because you're worried that next year you might need it? It'd be nice to help out. I noticed that you're doing for the mental health. I think that's great. I think,
We have 30 seconds left.
do I have how many seconds? I'm almost done.
Thank you.
So I want to know the difference between a social worker, a school counselor, school psychologist, and a behavior specialist. I know you have the mental health coordinator. Is that going to be their job? And how will this board respond to questions? Because I've heard that people ask questions, especially from Dr. Couch, and they don't hear back. But that's what I've heard. I don't know, I haven't done that personally myself, but how quick are you to get back to questions? All right, that's my time.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Rhodes.
I'd like to respond to some.
Sure.
If it's okay. The $1.8 million that you were talking about with fund balance, we are using half of that. We're using $775,000 to build in our balance, our budget.
Okay.
So that's one-time money, and the majority of that is used for salary increases for our employees, because the salary, the amount that we budgeted for salaries actually exceeds the amount that we're getting for new revenue.
Okay. You
and-
discussed that earlier. I
Yeah,
remember
so
hearing
so the 5% that you're talking about, once we pull out that $775,000, we will be under 5%
Okay.
of the amount that we would pull back.
And are the I know I got to go, the students in the KAP program, could they, if they wanted to help out and do some gardening or something around the school, can that be done, or is that something that they're not allowed to do?
Well, I mean,
There's
There-
students that like that kind of stuff.
I understand that, but you have to also understand that we have responsibilities for the kids to meet CCR, which means college and career ready. They have to have certain amount of seat time and be in class and doing, so you're asking them, are you asking them to do that during class or outside of class?
I don't know, I just brought it up. I
Yeah.
thought it would be a great
Right.
idea. They're stuck in that building all day. It'd be nice to get out and do stuff around the
Right.
school. And people can work with their hands around here. There's so many jobs in Kent County.
Got it.
Plumbers, electricians, and all that.
Right.
And they say there's no jobs. It'd be great. There's like the workforce investment program that you're involved in.
Well,
They'll
we have
provide
the-
like
we have
80% of the
CTE
salary.
programs. We do have the CTE programs what they can be involved in, and some of our CAP students are involved in that.
Well, I'm not necessarily talking about the cap. I'm talking about students in general. Just, those are a few questions I had.
Okay.
Thank you.
No
Thank you.
problem.
I just want to ask, do you want to explain to him why the $500,000 is in fund balance and why we've set that number?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the board when we did that, and as a board, we said we're going to set aside $500,000. So, and that is just to stay there if we ever had an absolute emergency. I'll give you an example. We didn't need to use it, but about 2 years ago, it was pre-COVID, it was near the end of the school year, and the refrigeration, I think it was the truck at Garnett, which is where we put all the cold for the whole school system, all that food, and we would have lost it. We had to go out right away and get a truck. We didn't, so that's, I don't want to say it's a contingency thing, but it's a fund
It is
that
our
we,
contingency.
and we've said, you know what, and it's to set that benchmark of $500,000, it's to prevent us from going in there and dipping in there. It's like if somebody made a personal plea to us, and when do you decide, yes, you dip into it, and when do you decide you don't dip into it? So we've said we're not going to dip into it because there may be something, I don't want to say catastrophic, but you can imagine if you'd have to spend $500,000 on something, it would be catastrophic. We wouldn't have time probably to go to the commissioners. It's just it's
And
kind of a
we've
safety valve.
We've had to use a significant portion of our fund balance every year. We haven't been able to balance our budget without using a large percentage of our fund balance every year for many years.
$100,000 was
Well, they explained that it was savings from last year during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's where the money came from. It came from savings where we didn't have to spend as much money for substitutes because we didn't have the substitutes. So that money was left over and that went into fund balance. But when we're fully operational again, and we
We're not gonna have
are
that.
fully operational, but when we're back to where we have the subs that we need, then we'll need that money in there to pay for the subs. So that, that money it's kind of like saying, okay, well, you've got this money for car insurance, but, you got a car insurance holiday for 6 months, but then it's going to go back to where it was before. And you have to be able to budget, and you might have a little bit of savings for a while, and yay, you can put that away in the bank, but it's going to go back up to the real amount later on, and so then you've got to be able to budget for that.
And we also, you asked about teacher bonuses. We did do bonuses this year. I think Dan could probably tell you what the breakdown was of those.
Yes, we did a $1,200 stipend. Half of it came in the last pay in December, and there's an additional $600 coming in the last pay in June. That's great.
And and I'll sort of comment, this is my first year on the board, and if somebody emails us, Dr. Couch and the board, I would say that they're getting a response almost immediately or within 24, 48 hours. So I hesitate to say that everyone's getting a response in that amount of time, but that has been my experience for the majority of the inquiries that we've received.
The last thing I want to say is, I've just talked to a lot of folks, and Dr. Couch, I just heard that you don't get back to people. I mean, that's just what I've heard. Now, that might be a bunch of baloney, but I'm saying,
It
I've
is.
heard it from more than one.
Okay.
I don't know how to, address that.
Well, I got some questions this afternoon that I was getting ready for the budget hearing, and I responded to
multiple
the.
emails this
I had
afternoon.
multiple
Yeah.
emails, and I responded to those. So, I had an individual who called today from my office and said that they were upset that they'd called multiple times, and Miss Manley is the one that answered the phone. She said, "Ma'am, you've never called this office. You've never called this office and left a message for Dr. Couch to call you back." But that's what she said, was that she called my office. And I have an assistant that answers my phone and takes messages for me. So,
The next item on the agenda.
One thing, this is just, as I was sitting here thinking, this is something I've requested every year I've been on the board. And I'll say it I say it every budget season. I would love for us to really, get out of our comfort zone a little bit of just having the hearing, and because there are questions the public has to understand. Okay, what is the fund balance? What is this number? It would be beneficial, and this is me, to have maybe some FAQ, just so folks could understand what's in here, outside of, we talk about it on the board, and I believe our budget is always very transparent, but just a little bit more understanding, some kind of document just to guide the community to do. It would be beneficial. I've advocated for community tours of the budget, that could be hit and miss, but again, it's just something for us to say this is what it is in an easier format. That's all.
I want to say one more thing to Mr. Rhodes about the fund balance. It doesn't wipe clean and start over next year. It's not like, say, for example, we had $700,000 to start this school year with fund balance, and we got down to 500,000. We don't start over next year with that $700,000 again. Once you've spent it, it's been spent. It's like
gone.
Yeah. Like Dr. Couch used the example, it's like using your savings account to pay your mortgage. You've got a mortgage payment every month. Well, it won't take long probably to go through your savings account if you're not continuing to rebuild it, that you won't have that money. And you know, the 500,000, well, I'll say it's an arbitrary number. It was a number that the board set, you know, that, I mean, it's,
We discussed
we've
it.
handicapped, I mean, we've, you know, we're obliged to obey our own rule. Now, somebody could come, I mean, a board member may say, you know what, I want to rethink that. Maybe we should change that. I mean, that's something that the board would have to do, but it would, you know, and, you know, there are compelling reasons where people come to ask for money to be included in the budget. When do you decide that somebody's request merits funding it and somebody else's doesn't? I mean, I'll tell you what, any single year, we could have spent that $500,000 and then there would it would never exist again.
We're also supplementing our budget with grant money. We get a
Yeah.
couple $1 million in grant money every year, and that money isn't sustainable every year. So like this, the mental health position, that's something that now we have to cover in our budget that used to be covered in a grant. So we are able to allocate some of our fund balance to that, but you know, that's not the best way to do that necessarily. We hope that we get enough revenue to cover everything, but we don't always, and so we have to go into the fund balance.
I'm happy to meet with you if you want to know more about it. Yeah. All right.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. The third item on the agenda section is the notification of our next meeting. The next meeting of the Board of Education of Kent County will be held on Monday, May 9th, 2022, beginning at 5:30 PM with the open session. Open session will be immediately followed by the board members going into closed session. The open session will resume at 6:30 PM. This meeting will be located at the administrative building in the boardroom, this room, located at 5608 Boundary Avenue, Rock Hall, Maryland, 21661. The last item on the agenda is the administration is recommending approval to adjourn the meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Before we adjourn, I just wanted to put out a reminder that the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting, the next meeting is next Thursday, the 5th at 5:30. It's here in the building and it's open to the public.
I just would like to say one thing. I just want to thank Ms. Stewart and,
Yes.
and whoever contributed to putting the budget together and having it so detailed. So thank you.
Thank you.
It's
We
always
make a
good.
good team. We're working to stuff. It definitely takes a lot, and the majority of the work is putting everything in the workbook format itself, and Ms. Stewart does a great job with that, and I really enjoy working with her, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stewart.
you very much.
And everyone else. We have a motion by Mr. Johnson. Do we have a second?
Second?
I'll take Ms. McGee on that one. Any further comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion